is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano in Baltimore, Jonas Shaffer in Cleveland, live on a Sunday in October. We are here to break down the Ravens' ugly 29-24 loss to the Cleveland Browns that snaps their 5-game win streak. We're going to discuss an ugly day from the secondary, a iffy game from Lamar Jackson and the Ravens offense, particularly the Ravens playmakers, the coaching making some curious decisions as well. All that and much, much more. But first, the Banner Ravens podcast is brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has been building a legacy of excellence for years, from developing hybrid technology to upping the standards of safety and efficiency. Toyota is always innovating, always making progress. And with a superior lineup of in-stock SUVs, including the adventure-ready RAV4 and capable, affordable Corolla Cross, you can experience the legacy of Toyota for yourself. Visit buyatoyota.com, the official website for deals, to find out more. Toyota, let's go places. Well, Jonas, I think the football gods decided the vibes were too good in Baltimore. Things were going too well. The Ravens looked too good at the game of football the last several weeks. They had won 5 in a row after starting the season 0-2. They looked like the best team in football, and then things came to a screeching halt as they fall to the moribund, the terrible Cleveland Browns, starting backup quarterback Jameis Winston. And Jonas, just an ugly, brutal game, and one that we were predicting would be a steamrolling Ravens victory, ends in a brutal, awful, ugly loss.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised that so many people in media, including at the Banner, were picking the Ravens to score like 30, 40 plus points. I mean, this was a Browns defense that obviously has a lot of talent, was getting healthier. EPA wise, DVOA wise, wasn't anything special, but on a down to down basis, they were pretty good at putting you in a tough spot. And I think we saw that today. And obviously the defense is going to be the big talking point, because Lord have mercy, this is a script that we've seen time and time again, and injuries had to do with it. Penalties had to do with it. Just poor execution had to do with it. But I don't think anyone's going to be going back to Baltimore feeling good about this one. I mean, even special teams were especially poor, I think in a lot of ways today.
Yeah, all 3 phases of the game, the Ravens were bad, and they still had a good chance to win this thing, which speaks to how much better they are talent-wise, I think, than the Cleveland Browns. But my word of the day, Jonas, is butterfingers. The definition, a person who frequently drops things. Clumsy person. Origin, first recorded in 1830 to 1840, and if you're wondering about the history of the candy bar, that was invented by Otto Schnaring in 1932. Congratulations, 100 years of the butterfingers. The Ravens had some butterfingers before this game. They must have snacked on a few of those candies, because they came out and had a bad case of the drops on both sides of the football. On offense, you saw Nelson Aguilar drop a pass over the middle, would have been a first down in the third quarter. That was just the start of things. Rashad Bateman dropped a pass in the fourth quarter that probably would not have been a first down, but it was in Browns territory and could have allowed the Ravens to go for it on fourth and could have made a field goal try easier. He drops that pass when the Ravens are trailing by 3, and Justin Tucker misses the kick, in part because he wasn't close enough from 50. And then Rashad Bateman again on a deep ball in the fourth quarter. Ravens again trailing by 3, 3rd and 14, would have been a 50-yard completion, and he just drops it, bounces off his shoulder pads. And the Ravens didn't look good on offense, dropping the ball, and of course on defense, when Kyle Hamilton had a chance to win the game for the Ravens, drops what would have been an interception. It was a shocking development. And on the next play, the Browns take the lead on a 38-yard touchdown pass over the top of Ardarius Washington, the deep safety on that play. The Ravens literally, you look at it from a glass half full perspective, you say they make those plays. They literally catch the football. They do the easy things, and they win that game. You look at it from a glass half empty perspective, and you say, this might have been worse than a 5-point loss had they been facing a better team than the 1-6 Cleveland Browns.
Yeah. To circle back just a tiny bit, we talked to Rashad post game, and he's had nothing but tough catches this year. I know he's had some drops over the years. I think drops were a problem for him in college a little bit, but he said, and it lines up with what he indicated after that second drop, where he said he saw that ball all the way up until the point where the sun just got in the way. Not a whole lot you can do with that. I think it was kind of reflected with how that ball made contact with him. It wasn't hitting him in the hands. It was kind of hitting him in the chest plate or near the clavicle. So just bad luck, I guess, with that one. But the Kyle Hamilton drop pick, the Eddie Jackson drop picks, I think some people were saying that there was a fourth drop pick. I mean, you've got to make those out. On the Eddie Jackson long, would-be interception, he didn't even make contact with that because the ball goes through his hands and hits the Browns receiver straight in his hands. And, Eddie Jackson is a, 8-year pro, 10-year pro? He's been playing this game a long, long time. He's got to know how to judge a ball, how to judge the trajectory, how to, anticipate the catch point and come down with that, or at least get your hands on it in some way. And then the Kyle Hamilton one, just baffling. He is, I would argue, maybe the most coordinated athlete on this Ravens team aside from Lamar Jackson. You think about his athletic pedigree, would have been good enough to play D1 basketball, played a bunch of sports growing up. He's able to play literally almost every single position on this defense. And to see him have 3 shots on one play at grabbing that pick and probably wrapping things up and have it immediately but followed by that just dagger touchdown to Cedric Tillman. I guess it was poetic that Eddie Jackson was the guy burnt in coverage in that, because him and Kyle were the main conspirators for this Ravens defense that, going back a couple games now, just keeps on dropping picks, keeps on making life hard for themselves. And, they say they're going to go back on the jug machine. They say they're going to go and get things fixed, but they've also been saying that they're going to clean up their big plays. And at a certain point, you just lose credibility when you make these promises that turn out to be empty week after week.
Yeah, it seemed like they had turned their luck around, because part of it is luck. We've talked about how turnovers, part of that is just literally the ball bouncing your way, you getting your head turned around at just the right moment, the ball slipping into your fingers. It seemed like their luck had turned around last week when Marlon Humphrey had 2 interceptions on back-to-back possessions last week against the Tampa Bay Bucks. You thought, all right, maybe this team has fixed its issues in dropping easy interceptions. And then Eddie Jackson drops that first pick, and Ross Tucker, who's on the broadcast, said no one drops more picks than the Ravens. And then they go on to drop 2 or 3 more throughout the course of the game. You're just making life hard on yourself. And when you're giving up so many chunk plays, like you said, those explosive plays, which they have been awful at not allowing this season, you are making it difficult when you're not forcing turnovers by taking advantage of the mistakes that you're making. I mean, Jameis Winston had 3 touchdowns and no picks. I mean, when he was with the Tampa Bay Bucks, he had a season where he had 30 picks. This is a guy who gives away the ball willy-nilly. He's a backup quarterback going in there trying to make plays happen. He was dangerous with the football all game long. There were so many opportunities for the Ravens to take advantage, and they didn't. And that's why they were the first team to allow the Browns to score more than 20 points in a game. It was, from the Browns' perspective, a historic day offensively. The fact that they scored 29 points was simply remarkable. I mean, they went 8 for 15 on third down. That's 53%. That would be the best rate in the league. And they come into this game converting 25% of their third downs. They were simply doing things in this game that they hadn't done offensively all season long. And a large part of that is the Ravens secondary simply reared its ugly head yet again.
Yeah, it's. I wish it were more cut and dried. I don't. I wish that this were a sample of part of a larger sample where Marlon Humphrey was on the field, Nate Wiggins was on the field. We haven't even talked about Marcus Williams, and I'm sure we'll get into that. It would have made it a little bit easier to point fingers and divine exactly what the hell happened out there. But I mean, the facts speak for themselves. This was not a good Browns receiving core, as evidenced by the fact that Deshaun Watson had not done anything remotely productive all year, as evidenced by the fact that they were giving up sacks at a remarkable rate. The Ravens had 2 today, and it felt like those were lucky. One of them was at the end of the first half, where there wasn't really anywhere else for Jameis Winston to go.
Both of them were at the end of the first half. It was a Kyle Hamilton sack, it was a clever play design. He was hidden behind the defensive line, and Kyle Hamilton used as a blitzer is so effective. He got right home to the quarterback and was able to bring him down. And then the second one was Yannick Ngakwe's second sack of the season to essentially send both teams into halftime at an inconsequential garbage time drive.
Yeah. And this Browns receiving core, don't need to belabor the point, traded away its best player 2 weeks ago. You are getting burnt by Cedric Tillman, who finished with 7 catches for 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm willing to bet that is maybe a career high in all 3 categories. Elijah Moore, 8 catches, 85 yards. Jerry Jeudy, 5 catches, 79 yards. David Njoku, who again entered this game with less than 200 receiving yards, 61 yards and a touchdown. I mean, you want to chalk some of that up to just divisional game weirdness, where it's just kind of a throw out the record books type of environment, because these teams know each other so well. They know what they want to do. They know their ticks, their tells, all that stuff. But there's no excuse for allowing 334 yards passing to the error-prone Jameis Winston, operating behind a much maligned offensive line, throwing to a receiving core that would not look to have out of place for a Ravens team in like the mid 2000s. You know what I mean? Like, nothing about this defense will inspire confidence. And Paul, I got to admit, I kept, as the Browns were marching down the field for that final put away drive, I was thinking back to our conversation on Thursday, like, is this the threshold that requires some intervention, whether it's a shakeup among the coaching staff or an acquisition at the trade deadline or something big? I mean, maybe that is maybe the Marcus Williams demotion qualifies as that. I don't know. Do we want to just hop into that?
I mean, that's the thing is, and by the way, those Cedric Tillman both touchdowns were the first 2 touchdowns of the season for Cedric Tillman. And we said coming into this game, you asked what the threshold was for the Ravens to have to make a major change, whether it was firing somebody, cutting somebody. And I said, Jameis Winston should not throw for over 300 yards. He threw for 334, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions in this game. And like you said, we should give the caveat that they are playing without Marlon Humphrey. They are playing with Arthur Malek just coming back from injury. They're playing with Jalen Armour-Davis just coming back from injury as well. So the secondary is banged up and the secondary is new and different. But yeah, you would think that they would have sent a message, whoever made that call. And John Harbaugh said after the game that it was an internal thing and he has full confidence that Marcus Williams will be back out there playing football later for this team this season. But call a spade, it was a benching. Marcus Williams was benched in this game. Starting safety, who they paid $70 million to a couple off seasons ago, was benched for Ardarius Washington in this game, who ended up giving up the game-winning touchdown. So maybe he's not the answer here.
Eddie Jackson did.
Or Eddie Jackson, sorry. So you would have thought that this would be the catalyst for this defense and this secondary to wake up and say, we got to make some changes here. Marcus Williams, our starting safety, just got benched. We have to play better. And you would think that would have lit a fire under them, and it didn't. So if that's not the change that they needed, what is? I still don't want to say, look, Zach Orr is brand new to defensive coordinating. It is his first time ever doing it. He's 31, 32 years old, still pretty young. Look at what Mike McDonald did in his first season. It wasn't until they got Roquan Smith, it wasn't until after the bye that they really turned things around. I mean, in week 12 of that 2022 season, I went back and looked. That was when they gave up a game-winning touchdown in the final seconds to Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars and lost 28-27. And that was the last bad performance of the season for that defense until that Bengals game at the end of the year. But that was really when things turned around. So that was week 12. We're still in week 8. There's still time for Zach Orr to turn things around, this defense to turn things around. And I don't want to be rash and say that somebody needs to lose their jobs over this, because I think we need to give them more time. But clearly something has to change. They have to dig deep and figure out what the heck is going wrong and how they can fix it.
They have already given up more completions on 20-plus yards downfield this year than they did all last year. That is remarkable. And obviously we want to put a lot of blame at the feet of these DBs who have not been good, with the exception of Marlon Humphrey. And I think for the, second half of this first half of the season, Kyle Hamilton. But the pass rush just wasn't there. I mean, the Browns were, talking to ESPN's Daniel Yafusi, who I used to work with, and obviously he was on the podcast on Thursday. He said that this line had the look of the line that was going to be as healthy as it has all season, with Wyatt Teller back at right guard, Jack Conklin a few games in at right tackle, the center and left guard returning as starters, but they were forced to go to like their third or fourth string left tackle, to Juan Jones, because Jedrick Wills, who had been one of the worst starters in the left tackle, one of the worst left tackles in the NFL, could not go. And yet, despite Odafe Owe, who is big and strong and fast, and you would think would be able to turn the corner against this guy who is like Daniel Fa'alele size, just could not do anything against him. And it was just baffling to me that was not an advantage that the Ravens could pick on just all game. I mean, I think that the Browns defensive line with Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, some of the interior rush that they have is, among the more athletic defensive fronts in the NFL. But the Ravens have Odafe Owe, they have Nabi Madubuike. Today was a way less than full strength Travis Jones. Yannick Ngakoue has some burst. Kai Van Noy has some get off ability, but they just looked like a stone-footed team. I mean, there was none of the kind of layering that you see on the Browns pass rush, where you are crossing someone's face and looping someone. And obviously they were able to get home a couple times with 5-man rushes, 6-man rushes, but it was outstanding. It was astounding, especially on those play action passes where Jameis Winston just could go through every single readings progression, it seemed like, because no one was coming close. And I had the pass rush as the Ravens' biggest area of need at this trade deadline, which is coming up awfully close. And I still think that they need to go make a move. I mean, obviously, they're going to be kind of bent over a barrel at this point, because teams know that this pass rush, which is like bottom 10 in the NFL right now in pressure rate, needs all the help that it can get. But man, I mean, like this past month or so, ever since that Bills game, it just felt like there's just been nothing reliable about it.
Yeah, and those injuries to Brent Urban, Michael Pierce in the first half absolutely made a difference. But Jameis Winston, it's not like you have the most mobile quarterback in the NFL back there. He's not a particularly good quarterback at avoiding sacks, and they didn't even get close in a lot of instances. I think you are absolutely vindicated for your prediction, Jonas, for the trade deadline, that they need and probably should go out and get another pass rusher, whether it's the edge or the interior, because they need to get home and they need a difference maker. It's not just they need another body like a Yannick Ngakoue that they can sign off the street. They need to probably surrender a serious asset or two, first round pick, second round pick, something, in order to get a difference maker up front, somebody who can change the game and who needs to be schemed against if you're an opposing offense. Because this team offensively, and we'll get into the offense because it was not their best day from an offensive perspective, but they are 5-3. They go on that 5-game win streak. They showed that they are worth investing in. They showed that this is a good team that can get over the top if they add some pieces. That is a team that you should go not necessarily all in for, but you need to make a big time splash in order to add to the talent on this team and add to the pass rush in this group, because it is worth investing in. This is still a very good team. They just need to add, and they need to make a good enough addition, because you don't want to be looking at the end of the season saying they went into the trade deadline, pass rush was their biggest issue, they didn't get enough, and that's what doomed them.
Yeah, I mean, it was notable and disappointing, and not a good reflection of the Ravens' leadership, to be honest, that we didn't see Roquan Smith post-game, didn't see Kyle Hamilton post-game. Both of them might have been getting treatment, but when the media comes in after a game like that, where you are having the worst performance maybe of the season against a Cleveland Browns team that, let me reiterate, was 32nd of 32 teams in DVOA offensively, you need some guys to step up. And I think the force multipliers on this Ravens defense have not been force multipliers. Kyle Hamilton has had a couple of really nice games. Marlon Humphrey has obviously, got his hand on a lot of balls. which have, I think, way overshadowed, some of those occasional missteps that he might have had within the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. So those 2 guys, you're getting your money's worth from them. But Roquan Smith, we talked about him on Thursday, not really doing a whole lot over the middle. Nabi Madubuike, again, good against the run, but has not really been able to kind of shake loose from those double teams that he is now having to deal with as a marked man in the NFL. I wouldn't say that Dafe Owe, was a force multiplier, because if he was, he probably would have gotten, a multi-million contract at this point. But there are just too many guys being paid too many millions of dollars to just look like Joe Schmoes out there. And, at a certain point, we are not very far from the Cleveland Browns or the Cincinnati Bengals, who obviously took a big L today against the Eagles, but they are exponentially more talented on offense than Cleveland. They have a exponentially better quarterback than Jameis Winston. And if the Ravens can't figure things out by that, I mean, this is one of the downsides of having as long a wait for the bye week as they do. That's a huge opportunity to not only get healthy, but just to reconsider how you're teaching things, how you're scheming things up. And it is an awfully, awfully long wait for the Ravens to get to that break where they can, seriously think about some big picture moves and how they can, get this team better situated for the playoffs.
Yeah, 5 games before they hit the bye, which isn't until week 14. That's a lot of time. And you mentioned the force multipliers on that defense. How about the communicators on that defense too? Roquan Smith wearing the green dot, of course, and Kyle Hamilton being another big communicator on that defense. And communication issues reared their ugly head again. That can't be happening this late into the season. The first touchdown to Cedric Tillman, which happened in the 3rd quarter and was Tillman's first of the season, the entire defense looked lost. They were still trying to get set, and it didn't look like the Browns were going all that fast on offense. I mean, it wasn't like they were going totally no huddle at that point. The Ravens' defensive front was not set at all, and Cedric Tillman breaks wide open. Jalen Armour-Davis looks like he doesn't know who to cover, and Tillman gets into the end zone for the touchdown. So communications issues continue to bedevil this team too. And then the final drive, the Ravens offense, for all of the struggles that they had in this game, still were able to take the lead on a big time drive with their MVP favorite quarterback leading them down the field. They take the 1-point advantage. It's 24-23. And all they need from the defense is just not allowing the Browns to come right down the field and kick a field goal. Not only do they do that, they don't take a 2-point lead. They take a 5-point lead. They come down the field and score a touchdown, which is exactly what you cannot do in that instance. And it was a defense that has let down the offense time and time again this season. It hasn't led to too many losses, but this is one of those instances where it was a brutal loss because it wasn't, this may not have been, them nursing a second half lead, a 10-point lead in the 4th quarter, like the Browns game at home last year, where they have a 10-point lead in the 4th quarter and they let it slip out of their hands. The offense wasn't as dominant all game. They did just enough to give them the lead late, but it was perhaps more brutal because of the missed pick, because of the missed dropped passes. There were so many areas for this team to take the lead. The missed field goal by Justin Tucker, and they simply did not step on the Browns' throats when they needed to.
Yeah, I mean, the ending of this game reminded me of the 2021 game, which was the final season of Wink Martindale in Baltimore. If you remember, it was a 2019 loss to the Steelers in Pittsburgh. It was just another kind of slobber knocker of an AFC North game. But Pittsburgh was held to 3 points over the first 3 quarters, and then the Steelers with Roethlisberger scored 17 points in the 4th to hold on for that 1-point win. And that was a game where I think there was, some breadcrumbs from Harbaugh about the post-game press conference about the beginning of the end of Don Wink Martindale, because he said they hit cover 0 coverage a couple times. You go to the well too many times and they get you. That's what happened. It felt like very deja vu-y with this one, because the Ravens seemed to acknowledge that they had no chance whatsoever of getting in Jameis Winston's grill without just blitzing the hell out of him. And it worked a couple times. It didn't work a couple times. And then boom, 2nd and 15, the play right after the Kyle Hamilton drop. they actually get a free rusher at Jameis, but Cedric Tillman breaks so easily from Eddie Jackson, and it's such a accurate throw from Jameis Winston that it is just like a layup, and you can't be having these layups, and it's just inexcusable what's happening right now. But I mean, I don't know, man. I'm sick of having the exact same discussion every single time. It's a little bit more easy to bring the rainbows and sunshine after, in games where the Ravens score 41 points. But when there are drops and there's problems with special teams and there's questions about the play calling, it just makes you wonder what exactly this team's ceiling is.
Let's talk about the play calling, because that was certainly an issue. This is the first game. I think Todd Monken has done a phenomenal job in both the seasons in Baltimore and especially this season. I mean, they wouldn't have won 5 in a row without this offense being as high-powered as it is, without Lamar returning to MVP form, Derrick Henry leading the league in rushing. Todd Monken has done a phenomenal job coordinating this offense so far this season. This was the first game since probably week 2, since that loss against the Raiders, where he made some really head-scratching calls in this game. There was, of course, the 4th down and 1 on the Ravens' first drive of the game. Ravens have 4th and 1 from the Cleveland 7-yard line, and it's a direct snap to Derrick Henry, who goes nowhere. Ravens don't pick it up. And that was an instance where even the broadcasters were discussing the curiosity of that play, because they were saying that you have Derrick Henry lined up in the backfield, and a Wildcat, you know exactly where the ball's going. I mean, sometimes that works when you're down by the 1 or 2 yard line, because Derrick Henry can do a little jump pass if you have like a tight end or somebody squirting out over the middle. But when there's, a much larger area to defend for the defense, you can't really get away with that. And so it was just a run up the middle, didn't even get back to the line of scrimmage. That was a curious play call. You saw the Charlie Kolar tush push again, which I don't know why they keep trying to make that happen. It worked once, but maybe you should retire that for the season. The Ravens ended up getting flagged for false start because Charlie Kolar was trying to draw a hard count and ended up committing a false start on that play. There were a lot of curious decisions in this game and a lot of curious play calls from Todd Monken in the offense.
Yeah, I think my biggest question mark for the play calling was just, you have this aggressive Browns pass rush, this aggressive Browns run defense. Where are the constraint plays? Those are the misdirection. They're the screens. They're the category of plays that use the defense's aggression against them, and we just didn't see them. Maybe the Zay Flowers ankle injury was enough of a concern that they didn't really trust him in the open field, even though Zay ended up popping off in the 3rd and 4th quarter, and I think finishing with over 100 yards. But there were so many plays where it felt like just hit him with the kind of running back play action screen, where you fake the handoff to Derrick Henry, you get the defense crushing forward and then dropping back, and you just kind of take that easy money over the middle. What about the wide receiver screens? Maybe Cleveland was just too in the Ravens shorts to really allow for like this kind of soft coverage to get away from press coverage that you need to really develop a runway. But I think there were maybe 1 or 2 screenplays called all game, and the Browns, it felt like, were blitzing the hell out of Lamar, especially in that second half. It just felt like the Ravens, a lot of times once they got behind the sticks, did not have that same potency to kind of keep things going. And I think Lamar, all things considered, had a good game, not a great game. I think I'd probably give him a B. There were just a lot of times, there were so many plays where he just made something out of nothing, like absolutely nothing. And the amount of drops he had is not going to be reflected in the box score. The running lanes that he opened up for Derrick Henry are not going to be reflected. Obviously, it would have been nice for Lamar to have had more than the 50 or so seconds on that final drive, but for him to get them as close as they did, and then have a couple, Hail Mary-ish attempts at the end to at least give him a chance. I don't know how many other quarterbacks in the league would be able to do that against this Browns defense. So I'm really reluctant to put any blame on him when I think there are issues with pass protection, there are issues with drops, issues with flags, yada yada. But obviously, I imagine we'll see some of those MVP odds start to drop a little bit after this game, and people overreact to whatever Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen is doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar played nearly perfect football for 5 straight weeks. He was phenomenal. He was the runaway MVP. He was the best player in football for 5 consecutive weeks. And for all the offensive struggle, they still had 24 points in this game. So it's not like they did nothing. He just wasn't perfect. I think you could tell from the very beginning, he was just slightly off. I mean, he had that.
Yeah, a couple turnover-worthy plays there.
Yeah, several. There was the overthrow to Zay Flowers in the end zone where Flowers kind of broke late, and it would have been a difficult throw and a long throw to the corner of the end zone, but could have hit him there. He had an inaccurate pass over the middle in the second quarter in his own territory on third down that was nearly picked by Denzel Ward. He had another dangerous pass where he was thrown across his body again in his own territory on third down, almost threw another pick. That's the other thing. The Browns dropped some picks themselves. Denzel Ward and this great secondary had some opportunities to pick off Lamar Jackson that they didn't take advantage of. So things could have been worse from that perspective. And I thought against the secondary, you weren't going to be able to get away with the kind of dangerous passes he was making for all that long. But they were kind of lucky that some of those passes weren't picked. But he still played. You mentioned that the drops are not going to be reflected in that final box score. And the fact that Derrick Henry, you would have liked to give him more than 11 carries in this game as well. I know you're playing from behind for a lot of this game, but 11 carries when he's averaging 6.6 yards per carry, that number probably should have been bumped up. And Lamar still did quite a lot through the air and on the ground. He still had 289 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and on the ground he had 46 rushing yards. So he wasn't perfect, but this team should be able to win against a 1-6 team when your MVP level quarterback isn't hitting every single pass.
I got a question for you, Paul.
Sure.
On the Ravens' second to last possession, they are down. What are they down? They're down 23-17. They get the ball with about 4 minutes left. They begin their touchdown march, and they score with 2 minutes, 19 seconds left. Cleveland, at that point, I believe, has all of its timeouts. Obviously, the 2-minute warning has not been hit. Do you think there was any erring? Did the Ravens err in, maybe not communicating to Zay or whoever was out there with the skill position players? If you get a big catch and run opportunity, or if you get a big run opportunity, do not go full speed ahead. We want a chance to kind of pace this out so that when Cleveland gets the ball, they have less than 2 minutes to go. They have less than 90 seconds to go. They have less than 60 seconds to go. Do you think that, there will be some regret from the Ravens officials, offensive guys, about maybe scoring too soon? On the one hand, you take the offense, you take the touchdown and run, I think, if you're the offense. But on the other hand, to know that the defense is as disadvantaged as it has been all game, and to know that Cleveland has those timeouts and the Ravens have struggled to stop the run, which is, I think, even more on the menu because of the amount of time that's still on the clock. Any misgivings about how the Ravens handled that final touchdown drive?
I think you just got to take the points when you can get them. And for, up until that point, the Ravens had only scored 17 points all day. So, they only had 2 touchdowns coming into that final drive. It was an awfully quick drive. I mean, that was the best the offense looked all day. They go 6 plays, 91 yards in 2 minutes and 19 seconds. They charge right down the field. Lamar Jackson picks up 22 on a scramble. He hits Zay Flowers for 29 on the sideline on a wheel route. He hits Mark Andrews for 9 yards. He hits Zay Flowers again for 23 yards. And then Derrick Henry scores on 1st and goal from the 2. So, yeah, I mean, in theory, you would like to take more points, but in that drive, you need a touchdown. A field goal doesn't help you. And you, at that point, just need to take the lead. And you have to, at some point, place some level of trust in this defense to protect a 1-point lead when there's a minute and 50 seconds left, or 2.5 minutes left, I should say. 2 minutes and 36 seconds when the defense is back on the field there, protecting a 1-point lead. All you need to do is keep them in their own territory, and you're able to come away with the win. And so I have less on the offense on that. That's, to me, more on the defense. Did you think that they should have tried to take more time, or do you think you worry about that later? Just get the score.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world where we know that the Ravens will end that drive with a touchdown, then you maybe tell Zay to go down to the 5 or the 4 or the 3 or something. But again, like if you are just doing tush pushes from the 5 or the 4 or the 3 and chewing up clock, then Cleveland is just going to take a timeout. And they had the full complement of timeouts, and they had the 2-minute warning. So there's probably not a whole lot of difference between when Cleveland would have gotten the ball back, because the Ravens obviously didn't take very long to score on that pitch play to Derrick Henry. And you could argue that the Ravens scoring as early as they did ultimately helped them in the back end, because obviously they got the ball with 59 seconds left instead of maybe only a couple seconds left if Cleveland had just bled them dry on that final drive. So I think there were obviously some questions about the Ravens' overall game management today, from the coaching side to the playmaking side. But I think there's probably not a lot of recourse for what they did over that final, or that second to last offensive possession.
And there were opportunities for that defense in that final possession that were more than just the dropped interception. I mean, they get the Browns into a 3rd and 7 from the Ravens 40-yard line with 1 minute and 18 seconds left, and they bring the house on a blitz, and Jameis Winston just completes an easy out route to, I think it was Elijah Moore in front of, I think that was our Darius Washington. And then they backed themselves up with a 5-yard penalty with a false start. So now they're making the field goal even harder for themselves. And that's when Kyle Hamilton drops the pick, which is it was just so emblematic of the day that they had. Everything slipping through their fingers. And then, of course, they give up the touchdown.
Yep.
That's what happened. What is your concern level, I should say, Jonas? Because we talked about the offense and the defense, and we mentioned special teams briefly, but another missed 50-yarder from Justin Tucker. I thought we had put all these questions to bed about Justin Tucker being less than goated from 50 or more yards, and yet they reared their ugly head again. Yeah. And that was the second kick, by the way, that he did not hit cleanly. He made the field goal earlier that kind of sneaked through there, that was from inside 50 yards that he made, but by a hair.
Yeah, I mean, go figure that the kick that Justin Tucker makes is the one that he slips on, and the one that he misses from 50 yards, obviously a little bit farther out, is the one where he does not have any problems with the footing. And I mean, that was another drive where it's 2nd and 3 after the Derrick Henry run on first down, and you've got the false start, or I think it was the false start on Ronnie Stanley as he's kind of falling forward before the play. And then you've got the drop by Rashad Bateman on 3rd down, and you give either of those 5-yarders back to the Ravens, and Justin Tucker probably makes that field goal if they, and that's to say nothing of the possibility that they actually keep that drive moving and they turn what became a 0-point drive into a 7-point drive. So it's just all these small little things, in the same way that they added up against the Raiders, who, by the way, Ravens were 8.5-point favorites today. They were also 8.5-point favorites against Vegas in week 2. So 2 of the biggest upsets of the season, I think, so far by point spread, both coming at the hands, or coming against the Ravens, is not a good look. You never want to bet against Lamar as an underdog, but it seems like when the Ravens have been these heavy favorites, it has not always gone swimmingly for them. And I asked Rashad Bateman afterward if, even though obviously this wasn't really a game where you could point your finger exclusively at the offense, and I said, hey, is this a kind of reality check game, a kind of come down game for you guys? And he's like, no, not a reality check game. Like, we know just how good teams are around the NFL, and I think we just talk ourselves into these narratives about how unstoppable this Ravens offense looks, that we expect there to be no speed bumps at all, even when they have to take their show on the road against a talented Cleveland team. Even while they're banged up, with Zay Flowers not being at full strength, and Myles Garrett being just a one-of-one type player. And I think that's the right mentality to take, but it's still extremely disheartening, I think, to see this team just give up the opportunity to keep their foot on the Steelers' neck. I think the Pittsburgh will probably win tomorrow night, and then the Ravens are back to looking at them from below in the AFC North standings.
and they have their work cut out for them as they head back home for Week 9 against the Broncos, who are looks like they're taking care of business against the 1-6 team that they're facing this week in the Carolina Panthers. As we record this, they're up 21-7. So we're talking about 2 5-3 teams meeting next week in Baltimore.
Game of the week. We're back
game
to
of the week.
The Ravens can only win games that are games of the week, except
Exactly.
for the first one, the first game of the week that they didn't win.
Make every game in prime time. Make every game against an NFC opponent. Make every game on a Monday night. That's all I ask.
Are you politicking, Paul, right now? Is this the election
if Roger is
spirit getting into
listening? Yeah, if Roger is listening, you have the courage to do the right thing here. All right. At Jonas_Shaffer is his Twitter handle. I'm at Paul Mancano. Jonas is in Cleveland. He'll have a complete recap of this game as Gianna Hahn will also join him on the BaltimoreBanner.com, where you can read $1 for 6 months is how you subscribe. Read all of their great coverage, and we will be back later this week on Thursday to preview the Ravens game against the Denver Broncos. Please like, rate, review, subscribe. Write us a good review on the Banner Ravens podcast on Apple Podcasts.